We ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to call the Clovis City Council meeting for March 10th, 2025, now at 6 p.m. Are we hearing? We're hearing you twice. Okay. Are we good? Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and have the flag salute. And leading us today is our Mayor Pro Tem, Diane Pierce.
Please join me in saluting the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This time we're going to have a roll call by our clerk.
Yes. Councilmember Ashbeck? Here. Councilmember Baskell? Here. Councilmember Pierce? Here. Councilmember Bessinger?
Here.
And Mayor Moanatua?
Here.
Sorry.
First item is the presentation of a proclamation declaring March as American Red Cross Month, and to present this is Councilmember Lynn Ashbeck.
Hello, friends. Would you like to step up to the, try not to look super excited about that opportunity, like, oh, really? Thank you. So it is our privilege to declare March 2025 as American Red Cross Month. Whereas during American Red Cross Month in March, we recognize the compassion of the people in the city of Clovis and reaffirm our commitment to care for one another in times of crisis. And whereas the generous spirit is woven into the fabric of our community and advances the humanitarian legacy of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, one of the most honored women in our country's history who nobly dedicated herself to alleviating suffering. And whereas today kind-hearted individuals in our community exemplify Barton's commitment as they step up to provide a beacon of hope for our neighbors in need. Through their voluntary and selfless contributions, they make a life-saving difference in people's darkest hours, whether it's delivering shelter, food, and comfort during disasters, supporting military families, veterans, and caregivers through the unique challenge of service, saving lives with first aid, CPR, and other skills, or delivering aid and reconnecting loved ones separated by global crises. And whereas we hereby recognize this month of March in honor of all those who lead with their hearts to serve people in need, and we ask everyone to join in this commitment to strengthen our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council, on behalf of the citizens of Clovis, does declare March 2025 as American Red Cross Month, and it is signed by our mayor. And 4 individuals leading with heart are joining us tonight. So, thank you for being here.
Our Director of Communications is Taylor Poisal, who's been with us for about 6 years. She started as a volunteer with the Red Cross in college. And then, of course, we have a couple of our board members, Jordan Scott, and, of course, Ms. Janae D'Ambrosio with Just Portrait and Eco World. I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for this. It recognizes the work of our volunteers, because it truly is volunteers who step up and step in to take care of people. 90% of the work that's done is through volunteers. So when the call comes in the middle of the night from the fire department saying that there's a home fire and people in need, it's our volunteers that show up. When the big fires happen in our backyard, or like they did in LA, it's our volunteers who show up every single day to take care of people and to take care of our service members, veterans, and their families. So thank you for taking the time to acknowledge their hard work and their dedication.
Absolutely. And I know you all did respond to the LA fires, and every other disaster that's coming your way. So I think American Red Cross is quiet until they're needed, and then all that quiet work pays off. So thank you for what you do, and thanks for being here, and happy Red Cross Month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we get a picture?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My communication.
Only if you put it on your Christmas card.
Thank you for what you do.
Board members to make this thing work.
Stretch. Thank you.
This time, we're going to move into public comments. This is time in which members of the community can address the council and on an item that is not on the agenda. If you would like to address the council, you may do so at this time. So, public comments. Okay, seeing none, we're going to close that portion, move to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are routine in nature and are recommended for approval by the City Council. These items will be considered and voted on as a single item unless a council member requests separate consideration of any item. Any of the council members like to remove any of the items 2 to 5 in the consent? Okay, seeing none. We're going to open the public portion. Anyone here have any comments on items 2 through 5 on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing them, bring it back to the council.
I will, make a motion, but note as a correction, there's nothing routine about item number 3, which, finalizes our district, boundaries in the city of Clovis for the first time in our history. So, not routine, the action is routine, but the significance is important. But I will make the motion to approve the consent calendar as posted.
Second. Just a comment before, was it 4-1? Was my vote?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mayor. So there were 2 action items in last week's agenda, if you recall. One was the selection of the map. That was a 4-1 vote. Okay. But the ordinance was actually adopted or introduced on a 5-0 vote. Okay, excellent. We have motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We move now into the public hearings. First item is item 6, amending section 3.1.126 and adding sections 3.1.126.1 and 3.1.126.2 of Chapter 3.1 of Title 3 of the Clovis Municipal Code relating to business registration and licensing exemptions for honorably discharged or honorably relieved veterans and active duty or reservist military personnel. Staff on this is our Economic Development, Housing, and Communications Department Director, Chad McCollum. Chad.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to try to make that a little more clear and a little less cumbersome for you. Thanks for muddling through it there, Mayor. I am before you this evening to propose 2 changes to our city's municipal code. The changes propose fee exemptions for veteran and active duty military business owners. In preparing for this presentation, I was reminded about the love and care that this community has for our veterans. If you spend any time walking through or driving through our streets, you're going to see lots of reminders of that. Veterans Memorial Stadium at Buchanan High School, honoring those young lives lost serving our country in the years following the 9/11 attacks. Statues at the Veterans Memorial District, honoring veterans from generations of conflicts. And at Peacock Market, home of veteran-owned businesses, a simple mural with powerful impacts to all that see it. And even our logo, featured prominently in this room, redesigned a couple years ago to add the yellow star as a reminder of all those men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice serving this country. So in the spirit of that, I'd like to share with you 2 proposed changes to our city's municipal code intended to assist veteran and active duty military business owners. A little background. In 2020, a state law was amended to exempt honorably discharged veteran business owners from local business registration or license fees. We have been complying with this change, but our municipal code was never updated. So it is one of the actions that we're asking council to take action on tonight. Also, in order to support business creation and growth by active duty or reservist military personnel, staff additionally requests that we amend our code to include active duty and reservist military personnel in that fee exemption. This additional change would further recognize the commitment and sacrifice of all military personnel, whether they be veterans, active duty, or reserves. The financial impact to the city is expected to be minimal, with the economic benefit of additional businesses outweighing the revenue lost from the fee exemptions. So next steps. If the ordinance is introduced tonight by a vote of council, it will return for adoption at the March 17th, 2025 City Council meeting. At that point, the city's Economic Development and Communications team will get to work providing outreach to our veteran, military, and business community on the changes. That concludes my portion, and I'm here for questions.
Any questions of Chad on this?
I did have one, Chad, I know that we always recognize veterans, but what about can we extend it to our former public safety? I mean, because they might move out and do business as well, so, former officers, they want to come back.
That would be a different ordinance. We can look into it, see what that impact would be, work with our city attorney and, that team, and bring that back to you if that's what city council would desire.
It was just a thought, because I think that we have such great, because it'll be unique and different. And I know we recognize veterans a lot, we will continue to do that, but for our officers as well, and firefighters, so.
Does that apply to taxes too?
All forms of taxes, free.
Yeah.
Everything's free.
And so I don't know how that works. I know that this is separate, and so you can't do anything about it, but I don't know if it gives direction for staff to look.
Was there a consensus of the council to have us look into that? Okay, would there, I mean, just briefly, would there be any other requirements that you'd be looking for? Minimum number of years with the city, actual retired from the city, not just leaving city employment, going to another agency, some questions, so.
I think when you bring it back, we can really think on it. Yeah, because I think.
We'll bring some proposals your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are parameters to this ordinance, sole proprietorship versus LLCs. So there's definitely some requirements that the veterans or active duty need to follow to be a part of this. Yeah. But we want to make it as open as possible and include as many individuals under this umbrella. Okay. So we can get to work on that for you.
Thank you. Okay.
It's not just Clovis residents, it's Clovis business owners. So if someone opens a business in Clovis, where this applies to that, right? But I could live in the city of Kerman and open a business in Clovis?
In fact, a contractor who has to have a business license to do business in Clovis, but they live elsewhere, they just travel in for the day, this would also cover them.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, this time we're going to open up to the public. Anyone here to comment or have any questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the council. Pleasure.
I'll make a motion that we, introduce the ordinance amending the section as stated on the agenda related to business.
You have to state them, huh?
No. See notes for details.
Yeah.
Related to business registration and licensing exemptions for, our military personnel.
As a honorably retired veteran, I second.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, next item is item 7. This consider an ordinance of the City Council for the City of Clovis amending Section 5.6.09 of Chapter 5.6 of Title 5 of the Clovis Municipal Code relating to authorized additional card tables at licensed card rooms. Staff on this is our City Manager, Andy Hausler.
So, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Approval of the proposed ordinance amendment will allow the 500 Club Casino to pursue necessary approvals from the State Bureau of Gambling Control and the city to increase the number of tables currently operated from 19 to 21 tables. The ordinance also includes a schedule of authorized future increases of up to 2 additional tables every 4 years for up to 10 additional tables, or 29 in 2041. AB 341, enacted in 2023, amended the Business and Professions Code to authorize the city to amend an existing gambling or card room ordinance to increase the number of gambling tables that may be operated in a gambling establishment. To be eligible to increase the numbers of gaming tables, the gambling establishment must be operating fewer than 20 gambling tables. The 500 Club Casino is the only licensed gambling establishment in Clovis and is currently operating 19 tables. The proposed amendment to the city's card room ordinance establishes a phased schedule for potential future table increases, allowing for authorized incremental increases. The California Department of Justice, Bureau of Gambling Control, has reviewed the proposed ordinance and found it to be in compliance. The Police Department has reviewed the request and has expressed no concerns, and staff recommends City Council approve the proposed ordinance amendment. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Andy had a question. The process for those tables, did we ask the state and then they gave the schedule, or did we recommend the schedule as proposed and then the state just sort of rubber stamped it?
I believe the legislation governs the table growth, but our city attorney has some background on it.
Yeah, the legislation governs the growth of the tables, no more than 10 over that schedule, and 2 in the initial year of the ordinance adoption. So they could increase by up to, or go up to 21 within the next year, and then it's a 4-year schedule after that. So it's based on the legislation, but I will say, we had a proposed schedule that was maybe, I wouldn't say more aggressive than that, but, allowing for some additional stuff, and the DOJ said, no, we don't think that complies. So there's a process in the Gambling Control Act for us to send the proposed ordinance for review and comment. They did review our initial draft. They said, no, we need to pare it back a little bit. I think members of the 500 Club are here as well, but, so this schedule complies with the law and also has been blessed by the DOJ.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, staff?
I was looking for it when I was reading this. So is there any, I see that to have the increase, you have to be current on taxes and some of those sorts of requirements. Is there anything about performance or calls for service or impact on a community that's part of this code, or it's not, is an automatic increase?
It's not automatic. So
they have to come back every 4 years?
Correct. Heavily regulated area, and
right.
so the police department reviews it. The DOJ also reviews whenever there's a request to go forward. And our ordinance is in there, and I don't have it.
I was trying to, I couldn't find it, and so that's why is there something about?
That code section is behind the ordinance, so the only thing that we modified was basically subsection A of 5.9.06. The rest of that code section is in there and wasn't really modified at all. So the permissible games, the hours of operation, they still have to be in compliance with all those things, as well as the background check for the business owners themselves, the background check for the employees that get work permits to work there as well. All that has to be in compliance.
There's a reference to the games, whether playing the game has led to an increase in complaints of cheating or an increase in police service. But I wondered if there was a general operational question about maybe underage drinking, or I mean, I just was looking for general operational standards of performance. So I don't see them in here, but as long as I know our police department works closely and all of that. So I'm not worried about it, but I just didn't know if it needed to be in writing or not.
Yeah, it's not in this section.
Okay. It's somewhere.
The city's ordinance is about 30 pages. This was just the one section that we needed to modify. So there are conditions imposed in other areas of the code that we're not modifying. So they're gonna remain the same.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other questions? No. Okay. This time we'll go ahead and open up the public portion. If anyone is here to speak on this item, you state your name and address for the record, sir.
Good evening, Jared Blondin on behalf of the 500 Club. Just wanted to thank Scott and Andrew for helping us on this. It's been about a 9-month process going back and forth with the state enacting this new legislation. So you guys have great staff, and you know, I work with a lot of cities, and you know, this is by far the best city staff. So you guys are lucky, and you know, definitely vote for your approval. You know, this falls in line with state law, you know, giving us this kind of measured increase over about 16 years. So this might be the last time we come in front of you for extra tables. But thank you, and thank you for your support.
There was no quicker way. The state was pretty strict on, because I want you to be as competitive as possible, especially when they're just down the street. And so the quicker we can get to that 30, and I think Scott kind of relayed that they were.
Yeah, unfortunately the law says 2 every 4 years, and it's 4 years from when you guys approve it. So if you guys approve it tonight, then the 4-year clock starts. And so, you know, I think when we get going back and forth with drafts, you know, the DOJ takes about 6 to 9 weeks to respond back to us. So, you know, it can be a long wait. So it's good this is finally here and we got it in front of you guys. And, you know, thank you guys again for your help.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none.
Mayor, if I could too, just one point of clarification. Jared brought it up, but the way we did structure the ordinance is this is the only time that they need to come for the ordinance. So it's kind of, each increase, whether it's 4 years from now, 8 years, 12 years, is just the process to go through the normal licensing process with PD and then with the state. So it's not going to take an ordinance amendment every 4 years to do it. The schedule is basically self-executing. So as long as they're compliant, they can do it basically administratively, and we can increase those tables in accordance with the schedule.
What's the pleasure of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the introduction of an ordinance to the City Council of the City of Clovis, amending Section 5.6.09 of Chapter 5.6 of Title 5 of the Clovis Municipal Code relating to authorized additional card tables at licensed card rooms.
Second.
Okay, motion second on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move to item 8. Okay, this is consider resolution approving the annual review and update of the Regional Housing Needs Overlay District map of parcels and associated lists reflecting those parcels that qualify for development as an RHN overlay project. Staff on this is our Assistant Planner, Marissa Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So you may remember this item from years past. Typically, it was Dave who would present it annually, but since he is enjoying his retirement, the baton has been passed to me. So let's get into it. The RHN Overlay District was established back in November of 2018 as a tool to help the city meet our RHNA requirements that were discovered with our fourth cycle housing element. It is important to note that about half of our sites are a significant part of our sixth cycle housing element, which is why we're still coming annually with an update. So what is the RHN Overlay District? Well, it allows for multifamily housing at a density of 35 to 43 units per acre as a by right use. So we have a certain number of parcels that meet our eligibility criteria, and they must be shown on a map and a list of sites, which are adopted and reviewed annually by the council, which is what we are doing here tonight. And just because a parcel is included in the overlay district doesn't mean it's restricted to just developing at the overlay density. It can still develop at non-overlay density, but if it does that, it no longer is eligible to be on our list and our map, and so we can remove it. We did notice this annual review in the paper, and it was published on November 14th. We received no inquiries or any comments, and we also held a public informational meeting here in the chambers on February 26th, and we did not have any attendees at that meeting, so we do not have any comments there. So on the screen, you will see our 2024 map, and it's really hard to see just because of how small some of the parcels are, but we do have them highlighted in yellow. They are sprinkled throughout the city. We started off with 25 sites, and one site, number 7, it's up there in red. We have removed that site because it has been subdivided for single-family residential, so it no longer meets our eligibility criteria, and we are not proposing any new sites to be added to the list, which leaves us with a total of 24 sites. And then a few slides ago, I mentioned that half of our sites are included in our sixth cycle housing element. So 12 of those 24 are listed here on the screen with their site numbers. And on this slide, you will see our 2025 map showing the 24 different RHN overlay sites on the screen, and staff is happy to recommend approval of our 2025 annual review. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions? Yes, Matt?
I just had a quick question. You said 12 of the 24 counted towards our sixth cycle?
Yes.
How come all 24 don't?
So there was, we took a selective approach to meet the requirements of HCB, and those are the ones that were most likely to be developed at the affordable density.
Okay, thanks.
Drew?
Just more of one question and a little bit of a statement. 30 units per acre to 45, how many stories are we talking a complex would be? Would that be 3 to 4 stories?
Yes, so it is 35 to 43, so likely 3 to 4 stories.
Here's my comment. It's unfortunate that the public is not engaged on this because there are these plots of land, and if you're sitting next to a undeveloped piece of land which has been zoned for this, they don't have to have permission to come in and put a 3-story or 4-story complex in there. And that's when people will start showing up, and we'll have to say, where were you in February? That's all I have.
Any other questions? Okay. So, we'll go ahead and open the public portion. Is there anyone in the public here to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that and bring it back to the council. What's the pleasure of the council?
I'll move that we approve the, review and update to the Regional Housing Needs Overlay District map of parcels.
Motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Smith. Next item is item 9. This is it's a receive and file, item 2025 5-year financial forecast for the city of Clovis through 2029-2030, and discuss options for budget preparation for 2025-26. Staff on this is our Finance Director, Jay Shango.
And Mayor, if I may, I'm going to kick it off with a few slides to start up, and then Jay's team will take over. So, the 5-year forecast, I just wanted to put this slide in on what is it, and how does it work, and what kind of tool is it for the city. It really is a tool that we use to assess our fiscal sustainability over time. We address community need, what kind of services can we add in different scenarios, and it is a stress test. It allows us to test different scenarios and what it means for our community's physical ability to meet those needs. We review scenarios, opportunities. It's not all what cuts do we have to make, but how can we expand services. And it is truly a building block for the upcoming budget. So those are things, at least from my perspective, on what the 5-year forecast does for us. Just a few trends and assumptions I want you to take a look at or highlight. Sales tax revenues is not a pretty picture. We're down 4.5% this fiscal year. We are forecasting 3% growth, hoping this is the trough, but the economy right now, we're just not sure. These are guesses, these are assumptions, and these are built into this forecast. Property taxes are steady. The expenses are growing faster than inflation, just like the rest of us at home. We're seeing our property tax, property insurance, liability, healthcare, insurance, cost of supplies are all growing faster than inflation. Some wild cards, inflation, 2.5%. I have a slide on that. I'll go into a little bit deeper, but that is a wild card. And I mentioned the economy. Housing growth, we've seen the impacts of cost of goods to build homes. Our sales tax and consumer spending levels, we're at 4.5%. We're just not sure where things are going to go. So this is truly a scenario and based on assumptions, and definitely shouldn't be taken as fact. On the inflation, so this is a report from this consumer price indexes, and for the forecast purposes, over our standard practice is to take the West Coast cities and plug that into the forecast. It's 2.5% essentially across all those categories in the most recent report, and that is what is in this. So I just wanted to make it clear we aren't just making that up, we're pulling it from a report. All right, so like I said, this is scenarios. So the first one I wanted to show is without Measure Y. And I want to see if this works. Okay, I have to kind of do it behind me, I think. All right, so without Measure Y, we're operating this year at about a $4 million deficit. And over the whole entire period, we'd be at $14 million deficit by the 5-year, end of the 5-year. So Measure Y was a huge boost to us. Without Measure Y, we'd be in a much different spot tonight, talking about much different things. Into Measure Y. The language above was actually on the ballot. I took the liberty of taking it out and putting it in bullet points to make it a little easier to process and digest. The items that were in the measure was maintaining public safety, keeping Clovis safe and clean, retaining small businesses and jobs, protecting local drinking water, repairing streets and roads, addressing homelessness, maintaining youth and park programs, other general services, and expenditure disclosure / spent locally, and I added widely managed. I think that was assumed, but I wanted to put it on there because I'm holding myself to that. And that was approved last November by 66.92% of the Clovis voters. So grateful to them, our residents, and our community for supporting us in this way, because we would be having, like I said, a much different conversation if not for. The revenue estimate in the measure was 28 million. We have had to back that off because of soft sales tax down to 26 million. We're hopeful it goes the other way, but we will see. It does grow at 3% per year, just like other sales tax. One note, Measure Y is a different type of sales tax than we're used to collecting, so there's a lot of things to learn about it relative to how much it'll produce for the city over the life of the measure. And then over the last 3 meetings, we've had department plans come to you on how Measure Y could achieve those goals that were in the measure language. So I just wanted to highlight that for anyone in the room that wanted to go back and listen to those. They were valuable. All right, so when we went and put everything in that the departments have requested in those meetings we had recently, wasn't quite enough in the tank to make it all work, which is not necessarily surprising. But good news is that we're in the black this year. And Measure Y starts getting collected in April, so we have enough to cover the hole and then some. And then over the life of the forecast, though, we still end up with a sizable deficit. And this is after significant investments in capital and fleet and other things are reserved. So we had to make some adjustments to what was requested of the departments. This is the positions that were in those requests that came to you. PD had 54, Fire had 33, Parks and Streets were 14, other general fund were 14. Actually, a few more that were mentioned to you, but were probably other types of funds that could pay for. And we had significant capital, fleet, and emergency reserve investments, like what we would love to do in order to protect our city and build our city.
Andy, those are over the 5-year forecast.
Correct.
Period.
These are over the 5-year forecast. Correct. We'll show a table with it broken down by year in a few slides. This is the Measure Y recommended. I'm not going to steal Jay's thunder and go over it in detail, but I'll go over the changes made. We're at the same spot here, but with all the changes we made, we end up with a fund balance that's 5.2 million, and we are in the black all years. One thing of note is that we start seeing our operating fund balance increase toward the end, and that is critical to some of our goals that I'll get into in a minute. So what did we do to achieve that? We shaved off some positions in the out years for PD, from 54 down to 50. Fire, we went from 33 down to 18. We did this mostly by pushing Station 7 outside of the forecast to probably year 6 or 7. With that operating fund increasing that I highlighted in the last slide, that allows us to likely fund that and be in position to fund the additional 9 positions. That would take Fire to 27. Parks and Streets, we maintained. Their request was relatively little, and they needed crews put together. And the other general fund positions, we are keeping at 14, but we're looking really hard at other ways to fund some of those things and how much the impact is going to be. And we did reduce our capital, fleet, and emergency reserve investments in order to make that forecast work. Here's another way to look at it. This is Measure Y only, the 26.19 million, just for the first year, by percentage, by function area, or kind of by department. Some of them are grouped together. Highlights on this slide is that you see overall 68% of the funds coming in are invested in public safety. Another highlight is that we are doing a study right now on our facility capital needs, and a large portion of this slice of the pie would likely be public safety, but it's not included in that 68, so that likely would move up. And then on our community support services, these are things like personnel, IT, other general fund department support. Likely about half of this will also be supporting public safety. So we're probably in all likelihood pushing up to close to 75%, if not more, focus on public safety in the first year. We don't know exactly what our facility capital needs assessment is going to say. That's a study underway right now. We are hoping to build a plan for you to look at and to start setting aside funding for. That's what that brown triangle is setting aside funding so we can make improvements such as the animal intake center, getting money aside so that we can take care of fire when they need to expand the headquarters, remodeling a fire station. So those are all things that are being addressed. Here's another way to look at the slide, body by positions by year. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but I thought it'd be helpful to kind of see how it is spread out over time. We are trying to ramp this up over time since we have some uncertainty on how Measure Y will perform and not be in a position where we aren't able to support the staff that we're bringing on. And with the exception of, I think the chief had asked for an engine this year and a squad this year. We had to flip them to make the forecast work. This is one scenario. At budget time, I'm happy to work with the chief. I know it's a high priority for him to look at doing that engine year 1 and the squad year 2. But in order to make the forecast pencil, we have to do that. So what is the impact of Measure Y? What does this get us as a community? For the police department, restored services, and we get proactive policing. Restoring patrol and specialty units, code enforcement, animal services, youth programs, investigations, traffic. I could go on quite a bit. The chief had a long slide on what he was bringing back, which is worth looking at. We'd also be restoring the support team within PD. Those officers need the support, records, et cetera. And we'd be doing facility improvements. For fire, we'd have one squad coming in line the first year in the forecast at least, and one engine crew. Both of those things would reduce response times and increase our effective firefighting force. We also would be able to purchase our engines and trucks, additions and replacements as needed. We'd be able to do a fire station remodel. We restore their support team that hasn't grown, if at all. We'd also allow for the setup of emergency medical services by our fire department. And Station 7 would be able to be constructed, mostly with development impact fee money, but we are preparing over the forecast to staff that station. Parks, we'd be able to double the care for our general fund parks. Additional tree crew, additional general fund focused parks crew, and projects funds for repairs, to clean that bathroom, to repair that bathroom, restore that bathroom, to do irrigation repairs, to change a tree, to add a tree, would be able to be funded. On roads, we'd be able to get the things faster and be safer. Additional road maintenance crew, we'd be able to do additional enforcement through traffic units in PD, as well as some design work and kind of avoiding issues in our PDS unit that focuses on traffic. We'd be able to support our businesses through additional outreach and care for local businesses and marketing, support youth and senior programs, creating a stronger community, increasing programs and classes to meet demands that we're seeing, and then maintain our core. That allows everything that I've said before happen. All the above. Finance staffing to ensure accountability, support services and IT, personnel, facilities, communications, fleet, all need to happen to support that one officer or firefighter being in the right position at the right time to save a life or to protect someone. I mentioned that we're doing an affiliates assessment and allowing us to do fiscal planning for that, so that we have money set aside and that we're not beholden to interest rates or borrow in the future. And then adequately funding our critical reserves, our facilities, our fleet, and our emergency reserve. We have been woefully under on our fleet fund. We need to catch up on that in order to have the vehicles our staff need, and we've been woefully under on our facilities, and we'd like to be at least at 20% for our emergency reserve. Council has a goal of 25%, but this forecast shows 20. That's what we think we can maintain in this scenario. This provides stability for us as we go into uncertain economic times, and I might add that sales tax is the most volatile revenue source that we have. So having more stability in place will protect the city in the long run. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Before you go into the actual,
yeah,
I think this is the question I think Councilmember Ashbeck has been asking the whole time with regards to Measure Y. And I'm assuming this is what the staff is recommending the priorities be. And you're asking council to support these priorities of these, where it's listed, what is the impact of Measure Y? So this would be, if we had, I don't know when we adopted, but if we adopted, this is what we would give the charge to the committee to look at. Is that the right way to read what's going on?
Yeah, and next week I plan to come back with these same exact items, asking for feedback from council on are we hitting the right mark on service levels, and are we resourcing that appropriately, to give us some guardrails going into the budget to come back to you saying we're on the same page, staff and council, with trying to achieve a budget that meets these goals, and they may be looked at differently, or we may have too much in one spot or not enough in another. You don't want that feedback tonight? Well, I'll take feedback at any time, but just so you know, we have set up an item for next week to fully discuss it.
Okay, so next week we'll discuss these 2 pages then?
There can be feedback tonight, but we've also set up a whole entire item just focused on that.
Okay. If that's the case, then next week I would like dollar figures with this, just so it's easier to understand next week. So, or percentages, because we're going to 28 million, right? And so, that's what's shown here.
Yep, all builds toward that, there it is.
So 26% is PD, and these are the items listed.
Yeah, and then the positions
Okay.
associated are in the next slide. So the question next week will be, are those service level targets what council agrees to, I think is a good spot to start? And then, are these positions what we think is what's appropriate to support those? And then also, the next question I'll be asking is how do we feel about the reserve funds and supporting our fleet, those types of things?
Okay. So, are we clear on the process here, just so we know? Does that affect you, Jay, if next week we throw all these numbers out of whack?
No, not at all.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Look how calm he looks. No, do whatever you want.
Yeah, so as long as we stick within the parameter of 28 million, whatever that number is, we can shift it any way we want, is what you're saying, so it won't be that difficult.
No, you can shift it any way you'd like.
Okay.
It's undeniable, though, that you can't shift that pie chart in a meaningful way without shifting bodies. So predominantly that pie chart is bodies, and so it's either the equipment or the building or the body themselves. So when you guys give guidance, it really comes down to the bodies that you're approving and the expenditures that go with those bodies. So undeniably, it's public safety centric, and it would stay that way unless you saw bodies that went otherwise in a meaningful way.
And one thing I might add, the one item that would be very hard for us to shift without significant changes to current is just maintaining current services. And this is making up for the revenue shortfalls that we're seeing in current sales tax and some other revenue streams. So this is literally allowing us to maintain what we have today, the black item.
Okay, got it. That's sort of just procedurally for me, just so that I'm clear on what we're doing, so. Lynn, you're good? Because I think you have this was a big question you had with regards to Measure 1.
Yeah, I mean, I have some questions that, yes, thank you. Yes, and I think Mr. Rollins is not here, so I'm gonna channel him for us. Tell him I'm talking about him. But when it says 68% invested in public safety departments, it goes back to the question. There are those who believe we sold this as a 100% public safety tax. Is that not what he would say if he was here? That's what he would say if he was here. So I think we need to be super clear that I'd also like to know what our police and fire think about this, because if you went into this thinking you were going to get all of Measure Y, so I just think we've gotten ourselves in a little quandary right now, because that's not all the money going to public safety. Now, I can argue clean streets and no graffiti and better parks, but I don't want to say packaging like it was creepy, but framing it in a different way. But I think that is to our citizens, if they don't see this as we will be safer and cleaner and better because of this, then I think we will get pushback. Now, people don't come to these meetings and give us much pushback, so if others would like to come, it would be great. But I guess that's really my question. Expectations are expectations, and so you can let Mr. Rollins know, I send my best to him, and I can hear him saying that's not what you told us you were going to do with the tax. I don't agree with that. That's not, he told me, he says, I never said that, but I don't think that's a message we communicated, and I am worried about that. And we need to be able to describe clearly that all of these things collectively make us safer and cleaner, right? It's, the only way that we're safe is not having police and fire. If that were all it was, they wouldn't need trucks or computers or equipment. So that's not practical, but that is what I am very worried about. This does not say that expectation of Mr. Rollins and others who might agree with that. So.
Yeah, and I've heard those as well. By putting this chart together, I think we're showing we're trying to create a holistic, safe community, and much of the resources are going to the traditional public safety departments. And just trying to visually show it.
So this probably doesn't say that. This says it's going everywhere else, and police and fire are part of the pie chart. So there could be, and I'm not saying to change it so it's a better story, I'm just changing it to say if we're going to define the language in Measure Y, this, to me, the 68% invested in public safety departments does not say that at all. So that's all. We can talk about that, I think, as we go, but I do believe it makes us cleaner and safer and better. So I'm I'm comfortable, but if you came into thinking it was 100% police and fire, this does not get us that. So I just think we have to be careful, and honest and transparent about how it adds up.
Yeah, agreed.
Go ahead, Drew.
To Lynn's point, I agree. I think that when we explain this during the process, maybe someone doesn't see how we have to hire people at personnel or have IT people to make sure that we have the hiring process done and the equipment and the fleet people, because it doesn't do you any good if you get in your police car and your computer's down, or your radio's not working, or you have a fire engine stuck at fleet because we don't have enough mechanics. So I think we can explain this in a way accurately, where we're spending money on fleet, but it actually applies to public safety, and I think we can do that. I think we have to go a long way around the barn when we explain things that are not clearly police and fire.
Go ahead, Matt.
Just to add to that point, on the way these pie charts are split up, I think, taking, the capital needs or whatever that may be, if that's part of the fire's pie, then put it in the fire's pie. That way it shows that that's going to benefit the fire department. If it's a cost for a police vehicle, then put it in the police pie, because then that's the true cost of what it is to make the police department whole. So, every police officer is going to need a patrol car. It's going to cost them an additional, $100,000 for a vehicle, equipment, all those kind of things when you start bringing people on. So I think when you start making too many pieces of the pie, it looks like it's going everywhere, when the reality is if we're hiring an IT person specifically for the police department, then put it in the police department's budget. That way it shows it's going there. And it doesn't make it seem like it's split up as like this is. Even though, I understand it, but the public's going to look at that and say, why are we giving $5 million to capital needs, and, what's community support for $1.5 million, that kind of thing. So just my thought on it.
Go ahead.
I'll just weigh in on that general concept myself. And, yeah, I think if one of the citizens who supported Measure Y voted for it, but was maybe apprehensive, they look at this pie chart and they see police 26%, fire 14%, then they see at least two other pieces of that pie that are larger than the fire percentage, one of those public safety groups. And so I think Matt's point is very good, that if there's public safety needs that are being addressed in other portions of the pie, it's important to have that more clearly delineated when it's put out there to the public. My other thought in general is, I think it's very important that in these first years, here we are, this is the first fiscal year, 25-26 of this 5-year forecast. I think the priorities that we set in these early years will give us the credibility with the people who entrusted us with this money, and they'll understand that, yes, there are other needs, but we prioritized what we promised. And so I think it's important to kind of look at it that way too, where I think we need to really be more intentional in these first few years of making sure that we are delivering on that promise. And if there's other things, just for example, and we can have the conversation, and I'm not even saying this is 100% necessary, but the idea that we're pushing Fire Station 7 out of this 5-year forecast, rather than maybe prioritizing that and looking at other things that could have been shifted instead. I think it's that type of thing that could make it seem a little less like what we promised. That's what I'm seeing in these things so far, and so I understand it's a complete discussion, we have more to talk about, but just kind of that feedback at the outset, those are a couple of the things that I see.
Any other comments or questions for Sam? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Before we get started, I just want to introduce my small and mighty team. I told you we're small, we're mighty, and there's 5 of us here. So let me introduce Susan Evans, my deputy director next to me, Jose Cortez, my county supervisor, and then behind me I have Rand Chan and Jose Reynoso, my accountant. So when you look at these documents, including the budget, we're the 5 doing it. So all the departments are participating in it, but we're the ones doing the lift. We're donating our nights, our weekends to make all this happen. So I just want to take the moment to tell them that I appreciate the lift right now. We're doing everything we can for you. So, as Andy hit on, the forecast is based off of a set of assumptions. We had to set, you know, in a moment in time, these assumptions, and then we build a 5-year forecast based off of them. They can change in any one moment, any one day, but we've set them and built this document based off of that. We look at all funds, but basically we center in on the general fund. It is the most important fund of the operating of the city. And then it's what we use to build the budget, the basis, the feedback that we get from you over the next several meetings. So as Andy indicated in the pictures, this one looks significantly different than it did last year. We showed that we could not keep up our expenditures with our revenues. We were going to have to make cuts, and we had talked at the department head level about that in around August, September this year, when we could see that revenues were softening, but we were waiting to see how the voters voted in terms of where they wanted their dollars to go. And so we've known that this is where we were headed for quite some time. Measure Y was the only ability to help maintain the services that the voters wanted. It is in fact maintaining it, and we haven't collected a dollar of it. We are anticipating that we are going to spend $4 of the $6 million just maintaining what we have. The Measure Y is huge for us. It allows us to do almost everything that we couldn't do, remaining fiscally sustainable, maintaining services, key priorities, and continue the way of life. Without Measure Y, this would look significantly different. And just as a housekeeping, our rate increases are projected for each of our enterprise funds. Our cost of doing business is going up, and as such, our rates are likely to go with them. So last year's forecast that Andy had up there, it had some stats in there that were hard to see, but there was no additional staff in the year except for 3 officers, so 15 total in last year's 5-year forecast. We had transfer one time for facilities, but only one of them and only one time. We had 0 transfer of funds in for fleet. For public safety, we had 0 transfer of funds for the emergency reserve, and we started to dwindle down the emergency reserve as expenditures are increasing. And another fun fact was the last couple fiscal years, our sales tax have been declining, which is the first time since the Great Recession. So Andy had a better picture of this, and he had arrows and all that, so I'll leave it to his discussion. But basically, this picture looks wildly different than it did just a year ago. There's a huge opportunity here for the city and its citizens to grow in a meaningful way, but in a responsible way. It's up to me and my staff and your direction and city manager to put the path in place to make that successful. So this year, what Andy showed you was that the general fund was structurally balanced for each and every year. We're showing the possibility of funding 50 additional police positions, 18 fire, 14 parks. Basically, we're showing that in some form or another, we can grow our services in the way of staffing. The significant transfers are being made for facilities and fleet and emergency reserve, but really the facility needs and the fleet are public safety in nature for the most part. Yes, there is some internal that needs to grow too, but when you're talking about the fleet needs specifically, that's 100% public safety. So here in the blue, we have the total revenues, and the black is the total expenditures. And over the last couple of years, we've seen that the blue and the black are really close. So we're basically limiting our expenditure growth based off of our revenues. And why this is kind of important going forward is that blue line up there shows that there's a significant gap between our revenues and our expenditures. And that's important because currently, we're only trying to fund operations, so we're not planning for the future for any capital needs, for any emergency reserve, anything. There's nothing being funded in that. So every year that we operate like that, we are going backwards. And that's been what we've been doing, to be honest, for quite some time. We cannot keep up all of the pieces that we need, which was that pie. Some of them are being neglected. Fleet was decimated during the recession. We're finally at a point where we can make a meaningful change. And so this chart here represents that difference in those 2 lines and what it can do. So the bottom blue line is basically what we were showing last year which is our investment in those critical needs, the fleet, the facilities, the emergency reserves. Basically, we were saying those are going to be zero. We can't do any of those and even keep up operations. And now what you're seeing on the red line is those transfers of funds. We don't know exactly what the CIP is going to be as far as the building needs. We need another year to get our arms around what we need as a city to grow. Facilities is one of them, staffing is one of them. We know these things. This forecast just shows the meaningful kind of desire to start putting money away for those items. So here you kind of have the sales tax scenario before Measure Y and after Measure Y, and it's undeniable what Measure Y is bringing to the table for the citizens. I guess the downside, if any, was that sales taxes are most volatile revenue. So if you build your budget and operations based off of that, it's highly unlikely that 5 years from now we're going to look like we look right now. It's just too volatile to know. You have the economy and you have the taxpayers out there that can close their wallets at any given time. And when that happens, this line right here can swing significantly. It's just our most volatile, and we have it twice as much now and twice as volatile.
Can I ask you a question? Jay, can I just ask you a question? When you all do this sort of planning, do you, in municipal circles, can you plan for scenarios? So this is our sort of most conservative estimate. This is we made all kinds of money and people are buying all kinds of things. Because I'll tell you what worries me is this is so reliant on this line. If that line doesn't happen and we've hired 10 of these and 5 of these and 8 of these, and then in year 3 of this 5-year forecast, we've got to go, oops. So is there a scenario planning tool in municipal circles that you all looked at to say, no, this is ultra-conservative, this is right, this is moderate, because I worry a little bit. I don't feel particularly optimistic about the planet right now in terms of people spending, and I don't fault tariffs. I don't understand all that, but half of what you read says it's the worst thing ever, half of it says it's the best thing ever, so somewhere in the middle is probably right. But if we're not able to do this, then what? So I'm babbling now, but I'd love to see, like, scenarios in terms of revenue, because I don't trust that line.
I understand. You know, I think that the 5-year forecast is a plausible scenario right now. I don't think it's cautiously, overly optimistic or pessimistic. I think 3% sales tax growth over the next 5 years, right at this particular moment, seems optimistic, but this is a possible scenario for how the 5 years could look. I mean, I'm very conservative in nature, so I do caution council this, we need to start planning from day one. We need to start this slowly. And if year 2 doesn't materialize like that, we can adjust. But if we grow up our operations too fast, we're not going to be able to adjust for that volatility. Right. We need to have our house in order before we grow too many bodies. We all want the bodies. We all want the staff out there, the support, the services, but we just can't do that too fast. I just can't reiterate enough that this has to be slow. And in year 2, if we can't do those bodies yet, we can't do those bodies. At some point, if you don't have the buildings, the bodies aren't going to matter. You have no place for them to go. You have nothing for them to drive. I'm very cautious, and that this is a scenario, but really, as far as I'm concerned, it's a 1-year forecast. I just only want to be looking out 1 year because we have so much planning still to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thank you.
Hey, James, go back to that. I have a tough time understanding this one because sales tax, and then I get the orange because it's 28, but how can 1 cent be as much as the current sales tax of 8 point something? I'm trying to understand it. So that's why I'm going, shouldn't blue be super big? And then it's just...
Yes, and the reason why was because these 2 charts were originally set with a $10 million base just to give scale. So up to this point, we never had another sales tax to scale it. So if you notice, the floor down there is 10 million. There's really 10 million of blue line missing from it. So your eyes are not deceiving you. They are truly almost equal, but we are approximating, we've been given a number between 85 to 95% of our Bradley Burns is what we're going to get. We still don't know for sure, so we're closer to that 90%, to be honest, between, $1 Bradley Burns to maybe 90 cents of Measure Y. So we really don't know until we start receiving it, and because that hasn't even happened yet, we really or just on the wait and see kind of stuff. It really is. But your eyes do not deceive you. The chart does deceive you, though.
Okay.
If you can see the,
No,
the
that
blue,
helps, yeah.
the blue is
It's one of
30
those
million,
settlement.
and then up to the orange, you're absolutely right. It was caught late in the game, and explanation was in order.
And just for clarity, of the approximate 8 cents that sales tax is charged currently, the city receives about 1 cent of that. Measure Y adds an additional 1 cent. So it is a doubling. I mean, to some degree, we're not sure how it's going to perform because it behaves differently. It's applied differently. So.
So then looking at the property tax, which was our largest revenue, discretionary revenue, it is now our second. And ironically enough, it is our most stable discretionary revenue. It just happens to be one of the slowest growth items because of Prop 213 limitations. So we grow as a city, we build homes, a couple years later the values catch up, and then we climb slowly at that 2%, often maximum. So that 2% is a struggle to keep up with the long-term needs of the city. That's where you do become reliant on the sales tax component to fill in the gap. I've been talking about this for years, and the story really hasn't changed. CalPERS is and continues to be a budget challenge. The numbers are still large. The top of the mountain hasn't been seen. This year, they beat, the rate of 6.8 with a 9.3, but the last 2 years they underdid it or it lost money. So one step forward, 2 steps backwards. But when you amortize this stuff over that 20-year period for PERS, it takes a long time to get out of those loss scenarios, and the gains are limited because they don't allow for the same, they want us to save, so they don't give us back the gains like they charge us for the losses.
I was just curious, are they still doing the same investment strategy, or they changed that?
They've changed it some. I think they've tried to become more aggressive, I suppose, in trying to meet the expectations of the system. Comes with more volatility, but the markets have been volatile. So the biggest issue, and it's not even an issue, it's just a fact, is that light blue is the public safety plan. So that's predominantly where the liability resides, is in the public safety.
How much of the percentage is under PEPRA and how much is under Classic now?
It's a good question. I don't know the stat exactly, and maybe Andy does, but it's quickly growing, to be honest, and it's surprising if you look at public safety and the new officers and the new firefighters, they're PEPRA, and so us old dinosaurs here are becoming fewer and fewer, and the PEPRA folks are coming strong. For the hires, are predominantly, if they're not laterals, they're PEPRA.
And I've been told we're about 50-50 citywide, give or take a few percentage points on that.
So again, same message, another year, there's nothing changing with the mountain, it's still tall, we still got a long ways to go. If we as a city change our funding strategy for that, we could come back and discuss that, but right now we're kind of on a pay-as-you-go until we get that caught up, until the old-timers age out.
Do you resemble that remark? Both of you?
So here we have our, just a graph of our emergency reserve dollars and percentage. So the green bars represent the dollars that we're continuing to increase our emergency reserve. Part of that reason, regardless of what you call the reserve, is to start to protect against that volatility of the sales tax. So that green line you can see, approaching and surpassing 28, headed to 30 millions. My suggestion would be to continue that with the idea that the sales tax is the most volatile revenue. And then you can see the black line that Andy indicated. We're basically, for this forecast, holding it at 20%. So those are the dollars increasing with a level 20% as our budget grows over those years. This picture is different than it was last year. This is our unrestricted fund balance, our what's in our checking account, what we can do to react to small market changes. And this year, when we approved the budget, we had $1 million in this unrestricted fund balance at the end of this budget that we just programmed. That's not a lot as it relates to being able to shift as things shift out there. Currently, any year that we can sit around that $5 million mark, I can sleep at night better. It gives me some ability to pivot in a year without saying cuts. We can say, tighten up your travel or those kind of things, but you don't have to go immediately. Without Measure Y, the $4 million that we would have been talking about would have been cut. It would have been likely people, freezes, all of those things. And this at least allows us to have some, ability to react positively in a 6-month period to be able to make some changes without overreacting, because when we budget it all down to basically zero, then we leave no room for error. If we don't go under budget on the expenses or over budget on the revenues, we're in trouble.
Jay, can you go back one slide to the reserve? Okay. So you said with regards to the cash fund balance, that you can't sleep if it goes below 5. Can you sleep with it at 20, or does it need to be 25 from a financial perspective for the reserve?
Right now, I can sleep at the 20. You have not committed a lion's share of Measure Y dollars to where you can't change course where you need to. They're not in bodies yet. They're in these ideas that they need cars, they need buildings. So if something changes right here, 20%, in my opinion, right now, is adequate, because you haven't accounted for every Measure Y dollar. It's not spoken for, unilaterally. We're starting to put it in buckets where we need to spend money, where maybe we haven't been maintaining. But right now, I can sleep with that line. Okay. That's a healthy line for me. But in 3 or 4 years, as bodies build up, no, that's not going to work for me. There's no way I can have $60 million in sales tax and say I'm going to have $20, $30 million in the bank. And staff up. Yeah. I don't want to come back and start to have to sacrifice bodies because we didn't plan for a sales tax volatility swing. That's not what I want.
And then the 25, is that a financial recommendation from finance, or is that just council? Because I wasn't there at the beginning. Was that a council number, or was that a recommendation from
It's a combination of best practices. It's what other cities like Clovis are attempting to do. Some, depending on their area, go up, 40% or whatever, but since we've been so close to 10, or, which is basically zero, I welcome the chance to have those conversations about 20, 25, maybe 30 when we figure out what Measure Y is and what a volatile year could mean. But right now, it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Just a brief historical comment on that. I can't recall the number, but when we started with the intent to get to 20% or 25, we were much lower, and so the council set a goal many years ago to just slowly save a little, so that we would end up at 20 or 25%. Okay. So that's how it sort of ramped up, and I think it dropped back down, as you said earlier. We were getting closer to 25 now, 20, but that's how we got there, and that probably was 20-some years ago when we started the slow climb to make it bigger.
Yeah. And then we grinded it down during the recession to basically go where we had to, make hard decisions. And then we decided that we didn't want to be in that position again going forward, council included.
Did you have a comment, Andy? Okay. Thank you, Jay.
So just a minute spent on the enterprise funds. They are self-balancing. They're ran well. If we have increases in supplies or salaries or whatever it is, fuel, we have to ask the ratepayers for increases for those, and all of these funds kind of reflect that balancing of the revenues and expenditures. Here in the water fund, we have $19.4 million in set aside, but we still are showing 3% increases necessary in order to attempt to balance the funds. But that gap between that black line, which is the expenses, and the blue line, which is revenues, we have in a rate study done right now, but it's likely that the structure is going to have to change in the water fund because the revenues and the expenditures currently are mismatched, and it's based off of current usage for those folks out there using the water, and there's a disconnect between what the operation's costing and what the revenues are that's coming in. So that is part of the water rate study that's being done right now by Public Utilities. So the sewer fund needs the rate increases each year, but shows that over the 5-year forecast, it's likely with those rate increases in a sufficient position. the black line for those couple of years, there are our capital investment needs, but as you can see out in, 28, 29, 29, 30, they are healthy from a revenue standpoint, but we do show the potential bond, rebate, going away because of the need potentially to, loan some of those funds for debt service. So you can't see it there, but it is a fact that those out years may include, talk about that bond surcharge. So community sanitation, this was done, a month ago. This was the position that it was at the time. We showed 4% increases being needed over the forecast period, but we showed basically that the revenues and expenditures, had a pretty good chance of meeting expectations. I think there is some unknowns right now with some contracts being negotiated, what this may look like regardless of who the bidder is or what the outcome is, if it's extensions, if it's new vendors. This was set on the assumption that we were going to have a rate increase of sorts, and this showed that potentially at that time that we could afford it. I'm not really comfortable saying that for this one, other than this was the picture a month ago. Transit's hard to look at from my standpoint. It's tied to the revenues. You adjust as it is. Measure C comes in. Does it go out? We have federal funding coming in. We show it here like it's perfect because we can only show the increases equal to the expenditures. So, the transit is a hot mess as far as I'm concerned. I don't know where it's going to...
You just ruined Amy's entire day, week.
If she could get up here and say it's going to be stable, I'll give her the mic.
You're going to just go with hot mess and live with that? Okay.
But in all honesty, they have adequate funding right now. They are well managed. It's just there is some unknowns here what transit actually looks like over the 5-year period based off a number of unknown factors.
Well, if Measure C doesn't renew, then
something significantly different.
Dramatic happens.
On the long haul, on the short haul, maybe not. What does federal funding look like? What stops and what continues as far as the funding for the transit? I could think of other funds that are in worse positions than this one, even with the Measure C unknown.
Does that make you feel better, Amy? Or worse than this? Does that make you feel better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
So they've deferred over the years, the 5-year, approximately $27 million in deferred revenue. So they're going to be able to weather, at least on the short term, as we figure out what operations are. If we're winding down certain routes or whatever the case may be, they have enough funding that we can figure it out if Measure C does in fact go away. So planning and development services, we forecast out around that 750, 800 units. We show that they're viable over the 5-year. Commercial is performing well. We all know right now on the residential, there's some challenges there as it relates to development, new tracks, land. All of those things are a challenge, but in this 5-year, we're plugging away at that average of 750 with good commercial growth. So in that scenario, it shows planning and development services is adequately funded and staffed over the 5-year forecast.
All right, so I'll jump in here. Just a quick recap on our budget plan. Tonight, we're doing the 5-year forecast on March 10th. Like I said, next week, we'd like to come back, or planning to come back with an item asking for council's input on what next year's budget should look like. We presented a scenario in the 5-year forecast for next year that could use some input and refinement. We'll be coming back again on April 21st, letting you know how that's looking, and then start our budget hearing process on May 19th. So with that, we're available for questions.
Any questions for staff? Go ahead, Matt.
I had a couple of questions. Jay, going back to the chart, one of the things that it says on here that we would have been $5.5 million in the hole if we didn't have Measure Y. What led to that?
So,
I think it's under here, it says maintaining current services. If we were to just keep it normal, we'd be $5.5 million short.
So on Andy's first slide that said, do nothing, we would have been short if we didn't have Measure Y to supplement or what we currently have in the budget for existing services now.
And you may have said it, but what led to us being in that position, that we would be having to get rid of positions if we did not have a Measure Y.
Increased, negotiated benefits that have come to be, additional positions that were put into play, wild, CPI increases across all of our expenditures. Everything else is more expensive, and as we forecasted out our revenues, we're saying sales tax is going up, it's going down. We're saying it's going up 3%, it's going down 4%. So if you wanted to point to one thing why that happened, I would say softening of sales tax.
And when we do this pie chart thing, if we were to take the maintaining the current services, take out the percentage that goes to police, the percentage that goes to fire, would that make more sense in our Measure Y stuff instead of, as we go forward with putting this together?
Yeah, so on the chart on the screen, the 18% in the red marked areas, is an attempt
Right.
to show that that is going toward public safety of that black slice, to maintain current services. And I didn't clarify this well, and then for the emergency reserve, the attempt on the 10% within the yellow box is showing that supporting public safety share of the emergency reserve.
Perfect. Okay, and I had one other question. Jay, when you talked about being conservative going into this first year, I agree with you. Just because of the unknowns and then having a shortfall number like that if things were to go sideways. So I guess for me, I'm looking at this thinking, should this first year really just be about police and fire and filling those positions and then seeing where we're at after the first year? I mean, is it gonna dreadfully impact the rest of the services if we don't have these positions? I mean, I don't wanna do that either, but, just because we're coming into something that's brand new, there are unknowns associated with it. We promised we were gonna take care of police and fire. I'm just wondering if it would make more sense just to be conservative with the route in the first year of filling those positions. And if there were, if there was monies available and the chief could flip his 10 to a 6.5 over those first 2 years to meet those needs, then great. But if not, I'm okay with saying 11 and 6.5 the first year. And if we have extra money at the end of the first year that allows us to build out those other positions and add them on, then that would be great. But that's just my thought on those.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm in agreement with Matt. At least I know that in conversations with folks, said that that was gonna be our primary focus. We probably need to, I know that we're gonna need, personnel's gonna need help, fleet's gonna need some help, we're gonna need to buy cars. But I think that at least the first year, that should be our primary focus so that folks can see the difference. And I guess I would probably ask for a little bit of trust from the public, because in 2008, when I was a captain at the police department, the recession hit, and we as a city threw out the anchor. I mean, everything stopped. We were looking through budgets with those ugly yellow rulers with the line on them, and we spent hours behind locked doors looking for $2 million, and then $150,000. And when other cities were still spending money, we stopped. And in 2010, 2011, when people were still laying people off for not hiring, we started hiring people. So we did, and this is it's a different city manager, different finance director, different department heads for probably almost all of them. I mean, you start doing the math, that was a long time ago. But we have an institutional track record of being able to react very quickly and stop the spending. And I think we're going to see that. We have at least one council member who was here then. So Lynn will be able to give us a little bit of influence on this is what we did back then. And I think we're going to be fine. It'll just be a little more, there's a higher expectation of the public, and good for you. That's all I have.
Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, I agree with both Matt and Drew, and that was my first thought as we were talking about the volatility of the sales tax and what Measure Y could look like, is it just reinforces my feeling of prioritizing in these early years what we are funding with those Measure Y dollars. And so, again, I think we absolutely, it's critical that we don't simply prioritize, but that we intentionally and aggressively prioritize those public safety needs specific to police and fire. And I mean, I have complete respect for all of the departments and the presentations that they gave us over the last month or so in these things. And clearly there are needs throughout all of the departments. And I look forward to being able to address all of those. But again, with Measure Y specifically, we have a responsibility to the public. And so I will just, again, reiterate that importance of prioritizing in these early years, making sure, just like Matt and Drew both said, that we really do focus on those things. And hopefully, as things go along, we will see a rosier picture. It will look like what we're hoping it will look like, and we can kind of backfill some of that stuff and recognize, okay, great, we can address these things here and there. But I think it is very, very important, again, particularly with the concern of the volatility, to make sure that our priorities are in order.
Any other comments?
I'm not sure I actually agree with that. I think I need to think that through a little bit more, because I think in some ways these positions aren't all created equal. Even the 11 in the PD, I don't remember. I can't really remember 3 of these and 2 of these, sorry. But I think it would be good to have the detail about what that is, because maybe one of them isn't, the comment about IT. So if you need that, you need that if you're going to have an officer. So I think the numbers to me aren't that useful in these categories, because that siloed kind of effect doesn't speak to you need a team to support this stuff. So if one police officer requires 1 car, 1 this, 1 that, to support a dog, whatever that is, there's a cost. It's not just the human. So I think these numbers need some refinement before I could say, yep, let's just do police and fire. And I guess I think if our parks look terrible, that doesn't make me feel safe. And if I think our code enforcement isn't very good, I don't think I feel safe either. And I think PD would be the first to say that's not helping us either. So I'm not quite ready to say just police and fire. I don't think Matt and Drew are saying that either. But I do like to see some refinement of what these all mean, because they're not all the same. I think that's fair. I have some other comments. Do you want to save those for next time, or what do you want? Is that what we're doing right now? Just generally comments on this?
Yeah, just if you have any questions for Jay overall, and then if you want to just get your comments on the record, I think that'll also help Andy as he's preparing next week. Yeah.
Well, just a few comments. I agree with Matt. The pie chart should not include the $4 million that we weren't going to be able to fund, right? Where other services, maintaining current services. I don't think that's I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. So I think that should just be taken out and put in our budget. That's what we're going to spend our money on, and some of those are police and fire. So I totally agree with that. I think I talked about scenarios. I am worried about the sales tax, as you probably are. I actually sleep at night, but maybe not about that, but about other things. So I think that's right. I think Fire Station 7 in fiscal year 3031 is a really bad idea. I think that's way too far out. I think we're going to sell ourselves short. So I would think that's more important than a 3031 expense. Our response times are pretty slow out there, according to the fire department. Putting it out 5 or 6 years isn't going to make them any faster. So that was a reaction to that a bit. I think having a reduction in our fleet and capital, we said part of this measure was to keep our fleet and capital, try to replenish it. So to reduce it means we're just going to keep getting farther behind. So I'm not quite sure about that. And then I didn't see, I don't know where the senior center is in there, but I think they're in the measure. But I didn't see anything in there calling them out. So I think we need to tell this story in a way that doesn't look like this. This is sort of a classic municipal pie chart look. These are not pie chart expenses. This is a citywide look, and how we get to police and fire and parks and all that, I think, is more holistic. So I would encourage some maybe thinking about how do you tell the story differently than that. So anyway, that I guess that's my thought, and so I wanted to see a little bit more refinement, a little more nuance maybe in what this looks like, so we can tell a more accurate story about, because it's probably 88% invested in public safety departments. if you add in IT and cars and fleet and building and locker rooms and all that, because that's all part of the whole. And I think that's the story we're trying to tell. And that's what's important to all of us, right? We said we'd do that. And we said we'd take care of recreation and seniors and parks. So, you know, and streetlights or whatever that was. So I think we need to think about this. Doesn't help us, I don't think, in terms of communicating our story. That's all for now.
Yeah, no, I thought Matt made an excellent point at the beginning with regards to, for example, facility and capital needs. And if those, whatever that 19% is, whatever it is, it adds to the 68. That's a pretty high percentage already. And then if we can tell, like what Lynn just said, it even really expands to where we're spending almost 89% on public safety. And so I think that's very important. I had a question with regards to the number of units. And so I know that we always project for that 700. In the last 2 years, we've been not to the 700, 658, 610. How much does that affect planning? And then how much does that affect the overall budget to support planning if we never meet that expected? Because it's going to be 750, 700 this year, then 750, and then 800. In other words, you know, it's never anything below. We never project below. And ever since I've been on the council, it's never been a projection below, even though there is inflation, there's a downturn in the economy. We always project that number, but yet we just adjust. And so I want to know how much that affects the general fund, the bottom line in dollars in which we have to change, or because they're enterprise fund, they're okay. They absorb it because they didn't get enough permits in. So is that a good question? Or do you understand that question?
I do.
Okay.
A couple parts of that is you want to understand the various impacts to the other departments. I would say that if residential building slows, it doesn't affect refuse to the positive or to the negative because they grow based off of unit count and routes. So if they grow 500, I don't think materially it makes a huge difference on the short term to a refuse. To the general fund, again, on the short term, not so much, but we're building our property taxes and our budget basis off of those units and those growth, regardless if it's residential or commercial. There's a component, say it's 30% commercial. So if you stop building the units and they stop building the households, they stop building the stores, then a couple of years from now, then it becomes a meaningful conversation. Okay. But on the short term, no, it impacts Renee's shop much more significantly than, I would say, the general fund as a whole. But a couple of years from now, we will feel the impact from those units or lack of.
So when does it become, not in a couple of years, because it's been 658, 610, and so we're projecting 700, but if we don't meet it, so when does that couple of years become, now it's impacted? Because it's already been 2 years, right?
Right.
We haven't met it. So I just want to know, when is that couple of years that you mentioned?
You have mitigating factors to those new units. You have households turning over, selling the existing residents, you know, so they're resetting the property tax base at a higher. You have mitigating factors for those lack of units. It depends on how many units in total are turning over, not just the new ones.
Okay. All right. I always worry about that because when we don't meet it. And then you said earlier with regards to transit, and if there's no Measure C, that they have funds to be able to take care of it for the short term. Can you explain that again? I'm just trying to understand.
So the transit funding comes in on an annual basis from, you know, COG and all these related to taxes. And so what transit doesn't spend, they defer for the future years to be able to spend in those years. We don't recognize it until the transit fund incurs the expenditures. Okay. So what I'm saying is that we're accumulating those funds over the 5-year period to approximately $27 million, so that if Measure C on the out years was to go away in its current form, then we would have to have a discussion on what future of transit looked like. But it wouldn't necessarily be a decision that we would have to make overnight because Measure C went away.
But 2027 is sort of that drop dead date when we don't. So when do we plan for that? I mean, we keep going, okay, it's a 5-year forecast, we're anticipating it, getting it. We know 2027 is a definite date of when it ends, so do we plan for it next year?
We have two choices, Mayor. We can plan for it to be here, or we can plan for it to not be here. We can forecast out either way in the document. Okay. There's still a chance that it can pass now. I wouldn't say that there's any headward so strong that it couldn't pass right now.
Well, it didn't pass already once, so it was pretty clear.
Yes. I think there's some confusion as maybe to the messaging on the whole measure. But if there's clarity with the measure, I wouldn't say that it's an impossible task for it to be voted on to renew it. But I would say yes, in a year, maybe two, if it's looking as such that it's more likely that it's not going to in its current form, then I think, yes, we would start to put that into the forecast to plan for it not being there. But that's not the only fund that it affects, unfortunately. So if you talk about removing Measure C from your forecast and from your budget, you're talking about significant changes in your infrastructure, your roads, anything touched by Measure C. It's a pretty serious conversation to be had.
Okay. I just want to know when is the most prudent time to look at it, because it is right around the corner, and I think the sooner we can, at least we can see, if you can give somewhere, these are the impacts. You're losing $4 million, whatever that dollar is, this is what's going to happen. Sort of like, you know, PD came in, they told us, if you don't fix us, this is what's going to happen. And so I think, I think it's a reality that potentially we will see. And so what does our city look like with it not being there? So,
I think it's easy enough to calculate between the departments what that impact would be as far as dollar amounts. But whether you're forecasting it for it to happen or not happen, I think that's just a little bit different story. But if you want to know the impacts of Measure C on our community as far as dollars that are coming in and spent on transit or roads or anywhere else it goes, bike, pedestrian, you name it, it goes all over the place. We could provide for bracing for an impact for Measure Y going away.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
To Vong's point, I don't think the average citizen understands the impact that Measure C has and the impact it will have if it's not with us anymore. So that should be part of the public education process.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead, open up to the public. Any comments or questions with regards to our 5-year forecast? If you can state your name.
Brian Wilson, 469 Bergen. I'm one of those folks out there in the public that saw the signs, police and fire on it. I did read the measure. I do understand that it was a general sales tax. It was going to go to general fund. Was hoping that the bulk of the first years out would go to fire and police, just to make them whole from back when the recession happened. I've seen a lot of information being thrown around. That's like the money pit now. It's there. We're all going to go in there and grab it. It looked like we're already paying back bills with it. It upset me a little bit when I heard that we were looking at it to benefit us here. I totally agree with you folks there. I do know that the northwest side of Clovis is a little bit long delays on fire response, so I think that Station 7 would be adequate sooner than the 5 years out. I do believe taking your pie chart and breaking that up a little bit to where you're saying that there was 18% was safety within that one block, and having that for, you know, how much of safety is in the public park systems. You know, how much of that's for safety, which there is. I'm not getting you wrong. The cops are going in there doing their thing in the mornings and stuff like that. So I know there's some safety there. But I'd like to see the first years out. Where it ends up is everyone's guess. It's going to be filling potholes. It's going to be taking care of maybe Measure C stuff if it doesn't pass. So I understand that, but I'd like to see the fire department, the PD, kind of come up to a standard where we want them to be in for Clovis for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm Jenny Kren, and I live on Bullard Avenue out towards the east. Anyway, this whole measure-wide discussion is pretty distressing as I listen to it, because it passed with more than 66, it passed with more than 2/3, which meant it could have been, we could have presented it as a special tax and gotten by with it. But we presented it as a general tax, and now recognizing that the bulk of our budget is in police and fire, that meant the bulk of the revenues from that should go to it. But it also, was not presented as, or at least to some of us, was not presented as a special tax. And so I don't think that it should be everything go to police and fire. There are, like we've said, there's parks, there's other things. The senior center offers a valuable service. We got our transit department. We got a bunch of different areas that could benefit. And, I don't like this playing semantics after we got the 2/3 vote and we can now pretend it was a special tax. It's just, it was a general tax measure, and it should be treated as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion. This is a receive and file. Any other comments of the council? Okay.
Can I just, one quick question, Jay? Could you refresh my memory on the sales tax allocations for online sales? And is there any activity in Sacramento to change any of that, to make that more favorable to cities, less favorable? Can you refresh my brain on that, how we get our share of Amazon delivery?
If we would just skip the facilitators for a moment, when we buy something online and it comes to us, it gets split a couple different ways. One of them would be that we look at how much brick and mortar we have here, our sales tax, compared to the total, and then we get a percentage of that county pool that isn't ours, it isn't Fresno's, it's out there, and we get a percentage of that. So for years and years, that was the way that we would get this quote-unquote online. It would be allocated to the pool in which we would get our 18%, 17% of that here.
And the pool is the county pool?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So if they don't know exactly where it goes, then you put it into the pool. The Amazon, the distribution centers have changed some of those rules where they're changing that point of sale, where one city may be getting all of it, or one city may not be getting any of it, depending on what merchandise they're holding, where they're shipping it to. And that's what we're used to dealing with, which is just generality of, say, 15% goes to the pool, we get that portion. Now, with Measure Y, what Andy has indicated is a shift in that to where it's a point of delivery, to where if I ship it to my house, I'm going to pay the sales tax on it, regardless of where that first 1% goes and how it's split. That second 1% is going to the city of Clovis. That is the local tax at its extreme. Meaning is that that tax is going to go where it goes. The one risk to that, to be bluntly honest, is that somebody comes into Clovis, buys a car, drives it off to Fresno, and that 1% goes with that too. So that's why I say that we need to see actual receipts on how this works out so that we can better gauge that new tax. But generally speaking, I hope I answered your question on
Thank
this.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a receive and file, and so thank you for the presentation, Jay, and your team of
You're welcome. I did bring them up here because I haven't been feeling well, and I was afraid that maybe I wouldn't make the distance, and I have my revenue expert and my expenditure expert, and I felt it'd be prudent to maybe here, but I managed to survive the evening and not cough on you, so.
Thank you.
You guys can tell him how he did tomorrow. Why did you say that?
I'll blame the medication.
He's got a great team. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the team for doing an excellent job. Now we'll move, that completes our administrative items. We'll move now to city manager comments. Andy?
I just have a few events I wanted to highlight. This coming Thursday at 6 p.m. at Bud Rank Elementary, we'll be doing a meet with the mayor and city manager. But much more fun is a ribbon cutting celebration for the Letterman Dog Park, much more cute at least. That'll be happening on Saturday, March 22nd. And then this one's about the cutest of all. The kitten shower is on Saturday, March 29th. So feel free to come on out and support our animal services and maybe take a kitten home.
That would be no. That would be a no.
So that concludes my comments. I'll turn it back to council.
Okay. We move now to council comments. Councilmember Basco?
Just a couple things. I forgot to mention last week that I went to the Crystal Awards while you were at the Hall of Fame dinner. So that was pretty cool to see the Clovis Unified personnel receive their awards and the big to-do that they do with that's pretty neat. And then this Saturday is the Special Olympics Polar Plunge. I'm going to be participating in that, so if anybody is interested in joining and coming up and jumping in the lake at North End, let me know.
That would be why? No, just kidding. You're a brave soul.
It's for the children.
I know, it's for the children, I know. I live that every day. It's for the children.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Bessinger?
Matt, how are you parlaying the polar bear plunge into bass fishing? I know there's a connection there somewhere.
I'm working on it.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Councilmember Ashbrook?
A couple of things. So first of all, I would like to ask that we provide the names and cities of residence of those who submitted the district maps. It is a public process, and I think it's fair that we know, just names, and I don't want addresses, just city of residence. I'm just curious about that. And I would like to know if anyone has a P.O. box. That would make me curious about that. So, if you could just let us know that information. Is that okay, Scott? Is that legally city of residence and or?
It's public information. I guess I'm not sure. I'd have to ask Dr. Tilton whether they had to submit a city of their residence. I'm not sure, so.
Well, if we have it.
We may just have a name.
Yeah.
We may not have address.
But if you have a city of residence or P.O. box, I would like that. So what's the best way to do that in maybe a Friday report or something?
We can communicate that to council as a whole.
All right, thank you. Two other things. A gentleman whose name is escaping me right this second, Mr. Rogers, I know is his last name, said that he came last year and talked to the council and talked about a crosswalk on Pulaski by the Festus statue, in front of ECU. Yeah?
Bill Rogers.
Bill Rogers, I remember his first name, sorry, Bill Rogers. And, John told him, got it, on it. Well, we're not on it, we're not on it. So he asked me again today about, maybe he's asked the others of you too. So I don't know if there's a future for a flashing light, maybe not a crosswalk, flashing lights or some signal or something to note that people are crossing Pulaski in the middle of the block. So an update on that. If we can't deliver on that, we need to say we can't.
Yeah, we can get you an update on the status of that.
So that would be helpful. And then my second one, I'm horrified, this is my fault, sort of. I brought here several months ago, the woman who lives over at, Clovis, Dakota area in the firing range neighborhood, the woman who lives on the back of that street. And I think she's having trouble getting responses on the curb when you come down, what's the name of the street? No, it's not Fedora. Sorry, I'll show you the map. But anyway, behind her house is the city of Fresno Street, and you can cut from Shields to Clovis Avenue through that curve. And she's had many traffic accidents. We've put boulders and more boulders, and she's had crashes and more crashes. So she's written to me, and I don't check my city email, staff does, and I've never heard from her. And so today she was like so disappointed that I never responded, and I never got them. So if you could follow back up, her name is Nancy Myers. I think she's tried to reach out to Thad and is not getting what she needs. So we need some help there because and that's on me for, I don't check my email, and so we just had a disconnect all the way around.
And I did reach out to the city of Fresno about that issue as well, so.
So maybe we need to resolve, maybe if I need to call the council member, I don't know who that district that is, maybe Mr. Maxwell's, I'm not sure. But anyway, we need to resolve it for a Clovis resident who happens to live next to a Fresno Street that is, I guess, quite the speedway. So if we could, and I didn't see that on our list of projects, so if we could just get that back on there, that would be great. And then two items. I was really privileged to be the speaker at the MAD Candlelight Vigil on Friday night out at Wolf Lake. So to our chaplain, who was beautiful, but it was the most emotional thing I have done in all these years. And so bless those people who live with that tragedy every single day, and I don't know how they do it, but it was really an honor, to be there with our chaplain. Aaron did a really nice job, so, that was very sweet. And then you missed a really important event. I am the Let's Talk Clovis speaker tomorrow night at the Clovis Historical Society, and that must speak something to my age, historical. So anyway, we're gonna be talking about what makes a great city. So that's, I'm not as cute as the kitty or the dogs, but you could have had it up there. Anyway, and thank you, staff, for helping me get ready for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lynn. Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have anything.
And I just wanted to report, excellent Arbor Day event. Thank you, Councilmember Bessinger, for joining a couple staff members. I think we didn't have the students, but we're gonna still do another one with the students, right? I heard, so that we're trying to do one with the students so that way the kids can come out, because I think they enjoy that event, from the kids from Weldon. So, but we did plant 5 trees on the trail, between, I say Jefferson and Barstow. So, great job, staff, for that. And then, I went to the Sikh Women's International Day. It was a Sikh Women event at the Regency. It was in Clovis. And you know who was there? Our co-chair for our youth commission. And she was so engaged and, yeah, just spectacular. So it was great to see our co-chair there. So I wanted to give a shout out for that. Excellent Meet the Mayor session last week. Thank you, Councilmember Ashbeck, for being there. This next one will be Councilmember Basco and myself up at Bud Rank. But please tell all your friends, come out, even if you can just stay for 5 minutes if you want, or stay longer if you want. So it is your meeting. We are coming out to meet all of you. I want to thank staff for coming out, being there whenever there are technical questions, for you to give specific answers to a lot of the concerns of our residents. Some of them just don't know all the resources and all the work that you all do in the city, and for you to be there to answer their concerns has been very encouraging to our residents. So we've gone from 1 to about 6 to 21 now, and so good. So Diane, yours will be a full house. The last one. Okay. And then on March 20th is the Red Cross Heroes event for March 20th. So I was sent that information. I don't know if we were sent it too, but then Shannon Major sent me and asked me to announce that and she's the representative for Senator Shannon Grove as well. So I just wanted to share that. And that's all I have.
I want to say something about you. I want to just commend you. The Meet the Mayor are great. So it was fun on whenever that was, last week. I really commend you for the idea, because I think people are interested, 1 and 6 and 21. And I was stunned at how concerned they were about districts in very personal ways. Like, well, are we going to be left behind? It was very hopeful. I mean, people were paying attention. So I think we feel like people don't pay attention, but people pay attention. So anyway, just nice job on that. And then one other thing to mention is our Youth Commission cleanup sold out, or filled up, didn't sell out. Filled up, 100 volunteers, like in one day. Yeah. Super great. So anyway, but I do want to commend you on the Meet the Mayor. I really nice event, nice idea. Thank you.
And I think I forgot to mention, I know the Councilmember Basco was the only one who wasn't there, but our Founders Day, that was great. And so let's continue to do the next one. And I think it's been wonderful just seeing past leaders, past servants speak with us. So that's all we have. The next meeting is on March 17th. And so we will adjourn at 7:49. Thank you for coming.